It's Sandra Pike from Royal LePage Atlantic and the Pike Group. And today we have Mr. Adams of UDI. And Stephen, I'll let you go introduce yourself. And I know that you're the executive director down at UDI, but tell us a bit about your role and what actually UDI is.
Well, thank you, Sandra, and thank you for inviting me to this. UDI stands for the Urban Development Institute of Nova Scotia. We represent developers, builders, professionals, suppliers, and some government agencies as well. And I try to frame it by saying that when you drive around the city, you'll see buildings. The ones that are being built, ones that are already built. Chances are that those buildings are owned by a UDI member, or when they were built, a member
Oh,
of
yes.
UDI. A member of UDI has had a hand in it, whether the entire build or the architectural part of it, planning, even some of the work that's being done. Um, we represent builders, developers, professionals, architects, engineers, consultants, and everybody involved in the development industry or develop. That's what we represent.
Oh, wonderful. So let's just talk about an article that came out last week, and it was the Auditor General, and she reported that the city completed zero recommendations when it came to building permits and inspections, and the blame went back to, oh, though there was a turnover in staff. In addition to that, we had a new program that we had to implement, and that's what happened. So, what thoughts? Should that have even mattered?
Well, it should matter. And ironically, I was on council. That was my second last month on council when we approved that. And I understand that things get lost in the cracks, but this is a significant issue, especially with the new process coming in and being implemented. One would have hoped or thought that there would have been some follow up on this and had it done, like on an ongoing basis. It hasn't. I know that Kathy O'Toole, the new CEO, is concerned about this. You saw that in those comments as well.
Yeah.
And I can assure you, knowing Kathy as I do, this will be addressed and sooner than later.
Now, is that the new program? What is that about? Is it a new computer program? What is it that they're doing?
Well, the program is called Posse.
Okay.
So everything is online. So there's quite a shift from the way it used to be done. Previously, you go to the front counter, put your applications in, you actually talk to people.
Yes.
Now they've taken away some of the human element, and
Mhm.
it's a difficult transition for some because they're used to having someone they can work with. Almost, some of our members on our board say it's like having a concierge. So you have someone who's able to help shepherd the process through for you. The process now under Posse, you submit everything online. At the end of it all, it tells you what your outages are, and you fix those, and then it's submitted, and then it's reviewed by a number of individuals. Previously, it was all, like it was done more of in a compact way. I
Yeah.
had an example that I tried to renew permits, and it was miserably difficult. I ended up speaking with someone that I knew in planning, and in 10 minutes it was done. So
Yes, of course.
yeah, so and I know one of the recommendations from Deloitte too, they had 15 recommendations for council,
Mhm.
sorry, for HRM, and one of them was to have, like someone to help with questions they had, to put a human face to it. That's going to be implemented.
Oh, good. So how long? So let's just talk residential because that's what I know. So let's say if we have a subdivision, let's say of 40 homes,
Mhm.
how long should I expect for, HRM to approve that?
Is this so? If is it all as of right? So we have a division subdivision all R1.
Yep,
Is that
all are
it's up?
one. Yeah,
Okay. So the latest information I have from HRM would be in the 8 month timeline, anywhere from
yeah.
6 to 8 months, and that would include you have to get your engineering drawings, you have to get all the information that you need for the subdivision, your engineering, your architecture, because you want some see how it looks, surveys, all that other stuff. And then you submit that as a package, you pay your fees, and away you go. So sometimes there are hiccups. There's no question there are hiccups, but this new system was supposed to help minimize those.
So the new system could be 6 to 8 months. So if we didn't have the system, how long would a process like that possibly take? I mean, if I look at, one of the developments off the Bedford Highway, that parcel of land was purchased in 2011, and
Mhm.
they're hoping to break ground, in 2024 potentially. So is it going to take that long? I mean, was it taking that long, or is that normal? Like, what's
Well,
normal?
there were times, I don't know if there is a normal. I don't know if there is a normal. But there were times where, years ago, these processes were quite quickly because there weren't as many applications to deal with. Now
Yes, of
there's a
course.
lot more applications, and it is the system. To be fair, a lot of HRM staff we're still learning it, or they're moving those individuals away from those jobs and into others. So it is a, what would you call a staffing issue, right? To have the same people doing the same thing over and over, sometimes they get moved out, and then there's retraining, and then the individuals who know the system have to spend time training people. So there's a bit of turnover. It'd be better if they could keep people in the system for a while to get rid of the backlog and to help move these permits forward.
So why is it that I can go, somewhere like Windsor and, get a permit a lot quicker? Like, what's the difference?
Well, one of the differences is they don't have as many applications, right?
Yep.
And I think they still use more of a personal permit process as opposed to posse. I don't want to put too many P's in this skull, I'll get all tripped up. But you have in Windsor, Bridgewater, you're actually dealing with individuals,
Mhm.
and they are the ones that can say, okay, you need to fill this out. You have to do this a little differently. You have to um, pay these fees. So they help you along. With the posse system, you don't have that human contact. As I said earlier, though, that they will be bringing in a concierge type individual.
Okay. Now, about a couple of weeks ago as well, they talked about increasing the cost of building permits.
Yes.
And not a day goes by and you don't hear about, you're always hearing about the housing crisis that's in Nova Scotia or that's across Canada. But if we're going to be specific and talk about here, here locally, is increasing the cost of permits. Like, do you see that putting delays on developers, who are building high rises because we do need, more housing?
Well, there's two parts to this, Sandra. One is council had decided to implement these as of April 1st. So individuals or companies or whomever have quoted prices based on the previous permit costs now will be out of pocket. So I, along with a number of others, have put in a request to have this phased in as opposed to having April 1st as the hard and fast timeline, then move it later on so that they can adjust their prices or they can at least keep those permit prices that they had before. I'm not sure if council understands that for every increase in a permit, let's say a permit goes from, permit process for everything, $100,000. It goes now to 125,000 or whatever the case may be. The extra money is going to be passed on to either the renter of the property or the person who buys it. So the developer or builder are acting as a middle person here. They're just going to flow the money through. So at the end of it all, the end consumer actually pays this fee. The developer or the builder is simply being a conduit for the funds. So at the end of it all, the end user will end up paying these increased fees.
I just don't, and forgive my ignorance, I don't understand how the city could run a deficit given that the housing, just went sky high. We were over $500,000 here locally for the average house price. So when you think about the average house price was 300 and change, now it goes to 500. You have a D-transfer tax of 1.5%. We had that many people move here and, building homes and new construction just went crazy during the pandemic. with all that money that we collected, how could we be in a deficit? Like I know for my own business, and I'm just a small mom and pop real estate with a team. I'm looking at my budget for 2023 and 2021, 2022. Those were unicorn years for me. And there's no way that I can forecast how much or how many homes that I'm going to sell in 2023 based off what just happened. Like I got to look back at 2019. Okay, this is what happened, increase my business by such and such, but I can't go off of the unicorn COVID that happened. Like I don't understand how we're running a deficit given the amount of money that was made.
So the money and the way the budget works is, you know, uh, staff comes up with a budget number, and there are a number of different things, the collective agreements, and the de-transfer tax is a perfect example of what's happening. There was all kinds of money,
Yeah.
lots of money, and council and staff reacted accordingly. So there's funds here. Now what we have is an increase in interest rates. They've doubled.
Yep.
And people aren't buying as much. The de-transfer tax isn't kicking in as much because they're not buying as much. They're waiting, they're renting. And the multi-unit right now is probably the best investment for builders and developers, because I know some builders that haven't sold a home since last spring.
Yep.
But interest rates, and you would see it as a real estate agent, a very busy one, a very good one. You would see that likely home sales aren't as robust, if you will, in the unicorn years.
No, they weren't.
Right. So the de-transfer tax amount, the revenues from that have decreased, and I dare say significantly, because when you have your interest rates double or more, people are scared to buy, and they're going to hold off, they're going to rent, they're going to wait. So the de-transfer tax money is not as plentiful. The budget was based on the de-transfer tax being X. Now it's X minus a bunch, and they have to adjust. Plus you have collective agreements coming up. I believe there's 4 collective agreements coming up. The price of fuel is higher. There's a number of different costs as well that have to be considered. So it couldn't be predicted. Everyone thought, this is great, but the interest rates really threw a wrench into the de-transfer tax and the house sales.
Yeah, and that it has. I mean, I know I just sold my property that I have closes today. My mortgage rates were up at 6.49. Like it went crazy with a variable mortgage. So I do understand that. But we get in and we talk about affordable housing, and it seems everywhere we move within the municipality, again, things are always increasing. And then they just come in and now they're implementing, this thing about the Airbnbs. But even if you sell your Airbnb, and if that's in the North End, the average person the average household income, which is around $90,000, they still can't afford that house or that Airbnb that's going to go up for sale in the North End. So where are we going to get the affordable housing from? I don't think I understand why you need to regulate Airbnbs. I get it. And, but that is not the answer to our housing situation, what we are faced with here, by no means.
No, it's not. It isn't. And I used the analogy years ago when people were buying, and you would be able to confirm this, or maybe it's not factual, but there were individuals when their interest rates are 2.5 or 2.75%, they could afford a $350,000 home.
Yep.
Well, maybe they figure, okay, money's cheap. Let's go to 400,000. So they could squeeze it out with that. Well, now if they have a variable rate, they're paying double the mortgage payment, along with the increase in taxes, insurance, fuel, and everything else, and power rates and water. That's a stretch. They're paying double the mortgage payment with no added benefit, no extra. It's just costing them more money. With the Airbnbs, that may make some difference, maybe. But again, who's going to buy them? And the individuals that really need the housing, like, with lower income, like workforce housing, I call it, they're going to be left out. In my opinion, the way to solve the housing crisis is to, go to the development community. I know this is a unpopular position for some, but why not have an RFP put out by the provincial government and allow the provincial government to say, we have X dollars. Like I read the last one with the rapid housing. The amount of money being given out works out to $305,000 per unit. Now, if land was provided, I know builders who can provide $200,000 for a unit for a semi-detached, and there'd be economies of scale with a multi-unit building. But they're afraid, for some reason, afraid to allow the developers to become involved, because the big bad developers who do impressive work and do it a lot less expensive than any not-for-profit organization on the planet, they are afraid to do that. So what I've suggested before, and I got kind of attacked, if you will,
Yeah.
I said that, have 5 developers put a bid in on a property. When the developer gets involved, there are no overages. Anything
No.
that is going to cost more, they have to take into consideration. They pay it. No one else. They don't go back to the city for more money. They can do a budget, provide the housing, and then turn it over to a not-for-profit. They know how to run these buildings. They don't know how to build them. Developers know how to build them. They certainly don't know how to run the housing that needs a 360-degree support system. And I'll say it. Some of these not-for-profits, I wouldn't let them build a birdhouse. They
Well, that's
don't.
not what they do. That's not their forte. Let the people
Exactly.
who, you know what I mean?
That's exactly it. And I was taken to task by that statement. I stand by it. And I know I've spoken to a number of not-for-profits, and I'm working with one now. They don't want to be involved in the build, because as soon as someone sees government money and there's no competition for it, then the people that are building, or they could, I won't say they will, but they could be taken advantage of. And that's too bad. That's really too bad. So if any level of government would provide some land, I know that the private community could build them, better units,
Yep.
higher end quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, whatever, and then turn them over to the not-for-profits, and the not-for-profits could operate them. And they could even take some of that money that's being done in the rapid housing initiative. The first one was 8.7 million. Let's put 8 million aside for the build, and 700,000 aside for a little bit of startup for the ongoing upkeep. It would make sense. But for whatever reason, governments at any level are afraid to engage the private builders, the private developers.
It makes no sense. When I was talking, I don't know who I was talking with. I've had so many conversations about the housing shortage that we have here. But, if you look at, I think it was with Kelvin Najardo from CMHC, we were talking about, the housing. Why couldn't I put, let's say, in my backyard, a secondary suite for my mother, my parents, and free up their house, so they could sell that house, make it affordable for another family or whomever. And why can't I have a secondary suite? Why is that process taking so long here? That would be, another solution to the housing crisis.
Yeah, the secondary suite, and I don't have any factual information on why it takes so long, but I would say that because it's relatively new to HRM,
Yeah.
that it takes some time. Plus, you also have, you have to have the sewer hookup, you have to have the water hookup,
Absolutely.
and the electric. There's a bunch of other outside individuals or groups that are involved in this. It's a new process, and that's where the issue is from a perspective of taking so much time. I was helping a fellow with one in the Fairview area, and it was, now, in fairness, he didn't help because he wanted to do certain things he couldn't do, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to take a sewer pipe or a water pipe from a certain area, and he just couldn't do it. But he finally had to do what HRM told him and go about the process that they wanted to follow. So there is a little pushback as well from some of the individuals that are building.
But what if, let's say we have a new subdivision, for example, what if the new subdivision, okay, here's the house, and in back, you can have your tiny house for your parents. What if the subdivision was built that way? Wouldn't that be easier?
Be brilliant idea, right? You've effectively increased you well, if it's all single family homes, you've doubled the number of available units. You could also have secondary suites. There's a really good design now of, and I believe the maximum floor area for a secondary suite is 980 or 960 square feet. You could have a building that looks like a normal semi-detached building, but instead, it would be smaller, and live in one, rent the other. You've effectively doubled your density and your capacity. And I just want to touch on the affordable housing aspect again as well, that the programs that CMHC used to have was 10% below market for the entire building. And a lot of the cynical people would say 10%, that's nothing. Well, maybe not, but let's start with, say the market value or market market rent in an area is $1,400. So take away 140 of that, you're $1,260. That's your rent under the CMHC program. That's locked in. I believe in some cases 15 years. So, and you can only go up by, the 2%, which is the cap now. So after 10 years, the individual's paying, 1260 plus 2% every year. They will be half of what the market is. There's the value in that. It's predictable, it's reasonable, it's fair. It works for the developer. It works for the individuals renting. There's no downside. There's where how to solve the capacity crisis, by getting CMHC involved and the developers involved, and offering housing at 10% below market, which becomes 50% of market at the end of it all.
Yeah, because we do need something, and I believe we need something yesterday, as opposed to another 5 years down the road. And I will tell you, I do a lot of transactions here in the city, and I started seeing the difference in our market back in 2017. Like, stale product that was on the market was selling. And then I remember listing something January of 2018, and I'm thinking, well, this is not, it was in Porter's Lake or somewhere out there. And I'm thinking to my own head, yeah, this maybe not sell till June, right? It sold in January. And I just saw properties selling quicker. And, that had nothing to do with COVID. It was the limited amount of supply that we had on the market, and it just kept changing. And then COVID just exacerbated the problem, which is unfortunate. But, I don't know.
Where I grew up, Sandra, there were semi-detached units, like one unit, which in an older part of Spryfield, which listed for $360, and within 2 weeks sold for $525,000.
Yep.
Right, a 50-year-old unit.
I know.
That now I feel very bad for whoever bought it, because things are settling out now. They're not going to recoup their money. They do have somewhere to live, which is a lot more than most people or some people can say. But from an investment perspective, it's not the greatest thing. But right, COVID exacerbated this, and now, back then, people were paying far more than what the actual monetary worth was. There was value to them, but from a financial perspective, it was not a good investment.
No, the same thing happened back, we had the ship start here. The market became, it was a flurry. I remember per door for an apartment building, per door went up by $30,000 within a month. And it just went crazy. And back then, you were lucky if you were getting over asking, maybe up to $40,000, but that was a stretch. But as soon as, we found out that the ships weren't coming here, it was just the first right of refusal. I will tell you, anybody who bought a house in that period of time, if they sold within 3 years, they either broke even or they lost their shirts. And this is no different what's happening in our market now. That whoever, if you did pay market value for your property during COVID, you may have to hold on to that property for, 5 years, because you're not seeing the big uptick anymore.
Well, look what happened in the States in 2008. It's the
Yes.
same. It's very, very similar. When they were about to announce the Ship Starts Here program, like to announce it, I had met a fellow, I'm going into the Midtown, he's coming out, and he said, if they announce this, and this is a quote, I'm going to evict my tenants and I'm going to sell the property and make a ton. He thought he was going to retire on the sale of that. And that gives people who own buildings a bad name. You shouldn't take advantage of situations. I think he may have been burnt on it.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, but people shouldn't take advantage of scenarios and situations where others are in the sort of a desperate situation.
Yeah. No, I would like to see, more inventory come to our market. And I know my phone's ringing a little bit more these days of people getting ready to list, which is thankful. But I believe that, it's going to be a lot different landscape for sellers this year. You may see competitive offers, but not as aggressively as it was back, during the unicorn years, we'll call them.
So what's
But
going to happen? What's going to happen? Like where does we're looking at population growth, new Canadians. At what point does supply exceed demand? Is that in the horizon? Is that 5 years, 10 years down the road, or is this just going to continue to create a critical mass, a whole lot of building, and more people come because we hear about people needing laborers, like skilled labor, whatever.
yeah,
Bring them in. Where are they going to live?
I know
We
that's
talk
the million dollar question, right?
Yeah, we talk about doctors coming, right? We need more doctors, more nurses. Where are they going to live? Where are the new Canadians going to live? Right.
I know.
So it's tough, and you could build, put 1,000 units in now. They'll be gone in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember when, we used to have 3,000 homes on the market back in the day. And now we're lucky, to have 300. It's, times have changed, certainly in my career over the past 13 years. And,
Yes.
I don't see it changing anytime soon with the inventory.
No, no, and it'd be good to predict because you want to stop building if you're going to end up with far too much supply. I call on your expertise for that. I don't see that changing in the near term.
No, nor do I. Well, Steve, I won't take up much more of your time. I just really appreciate that you're able to take the time. And, I know we're all feeling, well, I know I feel the frustration when it comes to our housing. And I just, if we just had that magic wand, right, that we can go ding and,
Yes.
we're able to accommodate everybody.
Well, like I say, in my private side of business and also in the UDI side, we want to be a trusted partner with HRM and the other agencies that in housing, and we're working well. We're working well with them. We talked about the posse. I just want to end off on this. The posse system, there were frustrations, so we hosted those that were implementing the posse system. There were four individuals from HRM, including the director, and we had 4 members of UDI who far smarter than I'll ever be. They're the ones who were doing permits, and they offered some reasonable solutions to the issues that were being faced. And it was like a 4-hour meeting that it was a great exchange of information, great exchange of ideas, and it helped. We want to continue doing that. We want to work with individuals and help them help everybody else.
Yeah, and that's so important. And trust me, we appreciate the members of the UDI and what they're doing. So that's we need that here in our city.
Yeah, and I think and Kathy O'Toole, I know Kathy O'Toole will make a huge difference in anything that she touches.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much today, Steve, for your time.
My pleasure, Sandy. Have a great day.